Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. If you can please find your seats, the show is about to begin. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, TBS welcomes you to the TBS Comedy Hub at Public, your official New York Comedy Festival headquarters. If you want even more comedy, check out nycf.tbs.com. Explore the full programming schedule and register for additional free events. And now, please put your hands together for Refinery29 present In Charge of Being Funny.
Up! How are you guys? Hello, I am Ruby Karp. I am the moderator of this panel in charge of being funny. How has your New York Comedy Festival been? Cool. So I'm a little bit about me. Before we begin, I am 17. I am a comedian and a writer. I just came out with a book called Earth Hates Me that you guys should all check out. I have a monthly comedy show at UCB East. And now I will introduce you to everyone else on this panel. Woo! So first we have Shannon O'Neil. She is the artistic director of the Upright Citizens Brigade. She's also a performer. She's on the Chris Gasteyer show on True TV. She gave a speech at my bat mitzvah.
It's true.
She is a phenomenal human being and amazing person. Next, we have Aparna Nancherla. She is a comedian, writer, actor. You can catch her in HBO's Crashing, on Netflix Master of None and Love. She just released her debut album, Just Putting It Out There, and she is also a phenomenal person. Next, we have Alison Levy. She's a producer on Wonder Chosen, creator of Adult Swim, Xavier, Renegade Angel, and The Heart She Holler. Next, we have Mia Ladovsky, director, that doesn't exist. Director, producer, creator. She just did Strangers, which is available on Facebook Watch, and she did Hillary's Pantsuit Power, which is awesome as well. Finally, we have Grace Helbig. She is an actor, writer, and creator, and the host of YouTube's It's Grace, and she has a podcast, Not Too Deep with Grace Helbig. Welcome. So everyone on this panel does very cool things that are all very different, but everyone on this panel is in charge of something. So what is it like to be in charge and running something in comedy? Big question, big.
Big, sure, I'll go. It can be, well, it's awesome. I feel pretty dope having my position as artistic director at UCB Theater. It's a very cool thing. It's also overwhelming because there's a lot of important decisions that that are made on a day-to-day basis. So it's a very challenging but also rewarding thing to be in a position that I am in. And I'm a woman. That's a secondary thing.
Yeah.
I would say it's better than the alternative of working for anyone else. So for me, we started our company. I work with 2 other people after we made Wonder Shows, and we make our own stuff. We make other people's stuff, and it's been fun and exhausting. But for the most part, I wouldn't want to work for anyone else. So it's kind of the only thing I can do.
Yeah. Go for it.
It's amazing. I think it's a huge responsibility, and it's also incredibly empowering.
Yeah. How do you guys balance being creative and also the business side of entertainment?
I think I am the least in charge of something here. Like I'm in charge of I'm self-employed, and I incorporated this year, so you could argue I'm in charge of something. But yeah, I think what Mia was saying is true. It's like it's empowering. It's also a lot of responsibility. And I think for me, I've always leaned toward the creative side of things and not as much the business side. So for me, it's been kind of educating myself on the business side and how to advocate for myself better, because I think, at least for me as a woman and as a person, I often have trouble putting myself ahead of other people. So a lot of times, even though my representatives work for me, I'm always like, well, I don't want to make her feel weird about saying no to this thing. So I think I have to sort of get over myself is sometimes my biggest challenge.
Yeah, I think I struggle with that too, but a great way to help kind of get through that is surrounding yourself with great collaborators and great business-minded people. I also don't have a strong business mind, and I've had to teach myself to be okay asking questions and not feeling afraid that my question might be dumb or something I should know already or looked down on in some way. And surrounding yourself with people, friends and collaborators that hold you accountable creatively and also kind of push you artistically and are better at different things that you're necessarily not has personally been one way that I find a lot of balance.
Yeah. Well, I feel like it's so hard because when you think about going into comedy or going into acting or entertainment, it's like, oh yeah, I have this great idea, but then it's like, oh, how do I make this a thing that exists in the world? Because there's so much more that goes into producing that kind of stuff than just, oh, I want to do this fun thing. How did you guys go from being that kind of mindset to let's make this happen, let's put this in the world, let's be the person running this?
Well, for me, it was MTV, I guess. So, I mean, they were great, but it was also like, we'd have so much more control if we take it on ourselves. And my partners are John Lee and Vernon Chapman, but when we decided to start our own company, it was to make our own show, and it was a very much like a take it back from the corporations and to not be working directly for any corporation and to not feel like you had to take their people or their advice or really anything from them other than their money and then make exactly what you want in exactly the way you want. And for us, it then just morphed into making other people's things, but it was originally just to make our own material. So I think, the more I guess that's easier now. I don't know, this was all like 12 years ago, but now I guess at this point, it's way easier to just make your own thing. You don't necessarily need to get so much permission or money from other people at this point, but yeah.
Yeah. I also think in being a creator, it's where you put your content, and everyone on this panel puts their content on very different places. How did you guys all find the different platforms you put your content on?
I put most of my content on YouTube, and that was because I was doing improv comedy in New York City, and it was really hard to get anyone to come to the shows. And so I got to go home to my apartment at night and privately make dumb videos and post them without anyone telling me, no, you can't do that. So that was kind of a hobby platform that became eventually a career over time. So it's just kind of like, this is convenient and accessible and gives me creative freedom, so I'm gonna use it for all I can.
I actually was the first team PA, the wrangler of all the actors on Alison's show Delocated about 8 years ago, and watching a lot of really wonderful people in power back when I was a production assistant. I knew that I wanted to be a creative, and I knew that I wanted to create something special and uniquely my own. And so, I actually think that I do have quite a bit of a business mind, and I tried to always align myself with projects that resonated with the kind of work I wanted to make. And I slowly made my way up the ranks, from production assisting to then assisting different directors and executive producers. And I tried to not only work incredibly hard, but be a true sponge, and to watch and observe and take in and learn by doing. And I was then producing some films with Beachside Films out in LA, and they did a documentary that I produced with them called TIG, and a feature film called People, Places, Things. And once I came to a place of more power within the industry, I also felt like I wasn't necessarily making the projects that I wanted to, even though I loved the projects I was making, because I felt like I had a voice that was still missing in the industry. And so by seeing other people who are special and wonderful and doing amazing things that they love, it really made me want to step up into my own voice and power. And so I applied for AFI's Directing Workshop for Women, I think 3 years ago, and was accepted for the 2015 year, and made the pilot of Strangers through that program, and crowdfunded for the pilot, and raised all the money off of Indiegogo, and made it with all of my closest peers. My best friend since I was 3 years old stars in the series. And so then once I made the pilot, I used it as a proof of concept for the series and pitched it around. And Sam Schlafer at Refinery29 was an instant fan, and I a fan of hers, and they greenlit it pretty immediately. And so went back into production and made episodes 2 through 7. We premiered at Sundance last year, and then in the last 6 months, Facebook came about, and they both acquired season 1 and greenlit season 2. So it's kind of about, I think it's the wild, wild west out there right now, and it's a scary, dark time in many ways in the last year, but I think that dark times allow for a backlash and allow for, kind of revolutions.
Yeah.
What was the original question again, Ruby?
So now that I've given my life story,
No, I didn't mean it like that. I want to make sure I answer it right, because I'm a scatterbrain these days right now.
How did you get to and find the platforms you guys do all the creative things you do
that
on?
we do? Yes. Great question, Ruby.
Thanks, Shannon.
Well, I still consider my main platform to be the stage at the UCB Theater. That's where I do most of my performing, since I'm there, doing 3 shows a week. And that was just signing up for a class and falling in love with it, and then just not stopping. But there have been many wonderful side effects from that, and that was just meeting similar voices and collaborators that I've done a lot of other stuff with, which led to jobs off stage as an actor.
Also a PFR performer.
Yes, which was such an honor, because
Neon
Wonder
Joe
Shows was my jam. Obsessed with it, have the DVDs. I still tell people about it. If you guys have not seen Wonder Shows, you're garbage people. It's one of the best shows. So yes, and I eventually got to be on Neon Joe, and part of that is also there's points where I improvise with John Glees. But yeah, I just signed up for an improv class and fell in love with it, and I don't know when I'll stop improvising, but the stage is, I like performing for just 200 people.
Yeah.
I don't want anyone else to see it. There's a true beauty in that I think is really cool and magical.
Yeah, I feel like Grace was saying, YouTube is where she found an audience. I feel like Twitter has helped me a lot, and I think it's interesting because as a stand-up, you are essentially creating and showcasing a lot of your own work and finding your own spaces to perform on other people's shows. But there are still gatekeepers that you have to sort of move through to sort of move up in the world. And I think when I started, I maybe had sort of an offbeat sensibility from what people expected of me, or they didn't quite know what to do with. And I feel like Twitter sort of helped me hone a voice where I didn't have to worry about someone else's approval, or like sort of the audience that liked it could come to it, but I didn't have to like go through someone else to be like approved. And I feel like I bypassed a lot of hoops just because someone would be like, hey, I really like, you know, what you post about, versus like, oh, can you get like a meeting with this person and then tell them your spiel, which I feel like is not as much my strength.
How did you guys find your voices and really hone in on that?
Failure. I think
that one.
that's the only way you're gonna find your voice, is you have to put yourself out there. You have to try stuff. You just have to continually fail and still fail. Like I still fail to this day, and that's still an important part of the process, because there's so much more to do. So it's just that's how I did it. And I had a big advantage of being a performer at the UCB Theater, which is the philosophy of that stage existing is a place for people to fail and fuck up and experiment and be able to find their voice. And it took me, let's say 8 years until I was like finally wrote a show where I was like, oh, whoa, this is my voice. Like, this is my voice. And I finally was like, I did it. It takes and I think I feel lucky that it took 8 years. I think it can take a lot longer depending on when you start. And also, like, if you're living a life, if you're sheltered and not living a life, you'll never find your voice.
I think that it's so interesting you talk about failure being an asset, because I think failure is a really interesting space to navigate as a woman, because especially in this industry, I feel like there doesn't always seem like there are second chances. Like a lot of men in this industry, if they make a film and it fails, no one cares, and they get their next opportunity. But there is a heightened pressure as a woman. Like, if you fail, do you get a second chance? And a lot of people don't. Mm-hmm. And so that's not to not keep trying, but there is different opportunity allotted for women and failure.
How do you guys think being a woman plays into the positions you hold and the voice you have and failing and all of these different aspects?
I never thought about, when I started making videos online, I just wanted to make anyone laugh in any way that I could, and I didn't really position my thoughts as I'm a woman on the internet trying to make people laugh, until you kind of have this luxury and this total punishment by being able to read comments online and have, I know everything about me that sucks, so go for it, try and let me know a new one. But the great thing about it is that it also creates conversation with people that do resonate with what you're talking about or how you're speaking, or the other people and creates this kind of community. And it was really wonderful to see unexpectedly that trying to make people laugh kind of cultivated this audience for me online that was primarily teenage females. And they were saying that they saw me as this like awkward older sister character that was failing and figuring it out for them and kind of giving them the assessment on how that was going, which kudos to them. They get to see that. I grew up with only brothers, so and I used to pray at night when I was Catholic. Then I would wake up and my older brother would be a girl in the morning, and I'd have an older sister. I'd be like, yay, she can tell me what to do as a woman. And so it became this really wonderful, more intimate relationship once I realized what I represented to them and what I enjoyed talking about and what they wanted advice about, or what they weren't hearing from at home. So the idea of being that female for them became this real kind of this strong suit for me, and really helped me shape my brand and find my voice, and still continues to be something I'm really excited about as part of my brand rather than a secondary thought.
I'd say for me, it's like on so many different levels. There's like being a woman dealing with networks and executives and agents and that sort of thing, which it depends on the people. Like sometimes it's just a nightmare, and then other times it's actually a lot of women in those jobs that can be fun. Then there's like running a business and crews and all that. And again, sometimes people are really great, and we try to work with the same people over and over again. But, you know, you see how shitty things happen on sets. And then there's like the more creative side, and I've been really lucky in that way. I've almost exclusively male partners, but have always really felt respected by them and listened to. But I think, you know, it's all the same stuff. I've you know, people can be abusive or, you know, dismissive, and sometimes it's because you're a woman, and sometimes it's, you know, you're just not funny enough, or, you know, you're not, you know, meeting someone's expectations. But I mean, I think it's, you know, as I get older and older and see it, it begins to open up, and like, oh, it depends completely on the person for me. It's like, I've also dealt with really shitty women. Like, so it's a range, you know, like, and really great people. So to me, I think the best environments are co-ed environments that, like, where people can respect each other. You know, it's really 100% based on the person themselves, and not whether you're a man or a woman or anything about, you know, what you're identifying as. It's you specifically.
Just speaking the point of like maybe not being funny enough, it is interesting though, because I feel like sometimes as a woman, like in certain places, like a writer's room or something, if you're the only woman, sometimes like what people laugh at becomes a little politicized in the room, where people will laugh at jokes that sort of apply to their groups. And it's like, even if there's just one other woman in the group, it'll be like you'll have that other laugh or that other shared experience, and it'll make a huge difference of what plays in the room. So like, I've been in rooms where I was like the only woman, and I feel like I said something that I know would be funny to like a girlfriend, and because there wasn't that other person in the room, you end up being pushed forward in terms of content.
Well, so much of what comedy is relating to people and getting people through that joke that they understand and playing to that humor, but it's so hard to do that when the people in the room with you don't get that humor. How do you guys use what's happening in the world and your influence on the world and your positions of power to help those people and help make political statements and help make a change in the world?
Yeah, fuck that. I don't know. I mean, like, you know, that was the whole point of Wonder Shows, and we did it. It was the Bush administration was sufficiently horrible, and I mean, everything about that was such a political show. And I mean, I don't know. It's funny, but I don't think it changed anything. And I mean, but I think at this point, like, I try to just do it again, individual, person to person. Like, I try to be a good person. I try to be around good people. I try to hire good people. I try to treat people fairly who are around. And I mean, there's a lot of things I wouldn't fucking make, you know, shows I wouldn't want my name on. And, you know, to me, it's just to avoid that stuff and try individually to treat people fairly that we work with, and to try to make things that like have our political view in them. But I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, I think I guess as artistic director of UCB, there's nothing where like just trying to force anyone to be political in their work, because there's also within an audience. It's been in the past year. It's been interesting to be like, what are they ready for? You know, like, at what point are they sick of, you know, is it like a Trump joke? They're just like, we didn't come here to hear that. We just came here to laugh and get away from all that garbage that's just we're being inundated with, especially during these times. So I'll embrace and encourage and help people to get something political on stage, but also I'm not putting requests out specifically for it, because I feel like it's an individual thing of how you want to deal with.
Part of my hope in enacting change, especially in these times, it's through visibility. I mean, I'm a woman, I'm a gay woman. I know that's shocking to everyone. And, you know, to have my voice at the head of the room, like, I'm building the writer's room right now for season 2, which is incredibly exciting, because all of season 1 was written just me and my friend Jim Strauss, who's a beautiful writer. And now it gets to be a lot more inclusive. And so, you know, I have a mandate that like at least 60 to 70% of the room has to be women. At least 40 or 50% of the room has to be people of color. At least 40% of the room has to be queer. And so it is partially through visibility, because then we all get to share our stories and reflect the world that we know and that we see. And I do see it as a responsibility of like putting my money where my mouth is, and like how the room shapes is a reflection of the world. And like comedy is a great way to reflect on the world and to do it in light and meaningful ways. So it's a privilege in many ways. I'm excited.
I feel like comedy is so great, and what makes comedy so great is that it gives you a voice in the world to put humor into it, because so much happens in the world, especially now, where things are just so unfortunate and everyone's so down, but comedy is that one outlet where it's like, no, wait, things can actually be funny, and like we can put a spin on this. How has comedy helped you and been there for you when you've needed it and when you've needed to laugh, and how is comedy important to you in that way? Hitting you with hard ones.
Well, for me, like some of my material, maybe in the past 2 years or so, has been talking more openly about like mental health stuff and like depression, anxiety, or like sort of my personal demons that I struggle with. And I think for me, that purely came out of inability to write about anything else when I was like in a sort of actual like depressive rut, and like really not being able to create anything because of that. And so I was like, well, I guess I'll just write about this because I have no other inspiration right now. And I didn't even, like, I only tried it on stage because it was really the only thing I had written as of recent. And I think the way it like sort of resonated with people was like surprising to me, because I almost thought, I was like, oh, you know, there are people talking about mental health and they're doing it like better than I am. So like, I don't need to add to the conversation. But yeah, so I think it's interesting because it is like a lot of comedy, I think, comes out of relatability, but a lot of that relatability can also come out of like vulnerability and sort of opening up about things that aren't just like, you know, like why does the pepper shaker always have more pepper come out than salt, which is not a relatable premise. So I should have used a better example.
How do you guys, we talked earlier about failure and how so much of comedy is failing, but I feel like that's so much easier said than done. Like I have so much anxiety, and my biggest fear is failure, and when I bomb on a set, it's like the worst thing in the world to me, and I can't not freak out about it. How do you guys deal with failure?
Age, Ruby. You knew that was coming. It is very hard in the beginning because you feel like you have to be perfect, and you feel like when you put super high stakes on something, you're going to make it harder for yourself to accept that failure and grow from it. I think it's just allowing yourself to be vulnerable and just making it like not comparing yourself to other people, and not letting their successes make your failures even harder to take on, because it's you who you're trying to make better as a comedian, and also, you know, I think as a person, I've become a better person through my failures in comedy as well. So it is easier said than done, but but like life is also hard. But I get to do comedy, and that's so stupid. Like I'm so blessed and lucky that I pay my bills because of comedy. As a kid, I would never imagine. I could never imagine that. So it's just I don't know, Ruby. But honestly, in 15 years, when you're visiting me in a nursing home, Ruby, and giving a speech at my death mitzvah, remember that how your failures have helped you.
When I organize
I think it's how you look at it too. I mean, what you're considering failure. I mean, I don't know. I think it just really is about not comparing yourselves to other people, and not really, you know, letting that even weigh in on how you think about what you know. If you know what you're doing and you think if it turned out the way you wanted, then it isn't a failure. I mean, ultimately.
Yeah,
I mean, whatever you're working on in your life. But yeah, I mean, to me, all of the things I make, most people don't rate well, don't make money, and usually don't get any press. But I'm doing exactly what I want to do. So to some people that would be a failure. So I think you just can't get so caught up in what maybe other people. If you're failing for your own self, and that's actually good, then it'll make you better at whatever you're doing. But you really shouldn't worry too much about other people.
Agreed.
Yeah, it's like reframing how you look at failure. Someone once said one time, because I also deal with anxiety and that sort of thing, that if you just try to flip your framework of anxiety can be also seen as excitement for something that you're about to do. And just that little kind of seemingly obvious thought has really changed the way I go into things that I feel really nervous or anxious about. If I realize that this energy is coming because I care about doing well at something, then that's cool. Also, failing gives you character as a human being. If you've ever met a person that has never failed, you would hate that person. Yeah. And so it makes you interesting and relatable and gives you perspective and experience that you can then use for the future. For anything, it's just fuel for a creative tank that you build over time.
Yeah.
And no one will ever get you later. I mean, we used to perform as a band, and it was the most brutal experiences ever. And those are definitely some of the best times I ever had.
And I think another thing that I think a lot of women in different fields have too is just imposter syndrome and this feeling that you don't deserve what you have and you're a fraud. And just to speak to reframing, my therapist was like, I was like, how long can you go without mentioning your therapist? Was like, well, okay, so what if you are a fraud? You've tricked so many people. You're a really good fraud. That's
You're a successful
yeah,
fraud.
exactly. So I was like, yeah, that's kind of true. I'm not hurting anyone. I'm just very good at conning.
Yeah. I remember I started a new school, my 11th grade, and the headmaster of the school said, if you don't fail here, you didn't try hard enough. It was the first time I ever failed a class. And, I know I'm funniest when I'm depressed, and I think a lot of good humor comes out of heartbreak and failure and letdown and things not working out the way you expected or wanted. And, it's all about how you react to that scenario. And there's so much camaraderie in failure and letdown and how people show up for one another. Failure does allow people to show up.
It's also so hard because especially if your content is on the internet or there are reviews on the internet or there are things just on so at your fingertips to see, it's so hard to not want to see them. When my book came out, I started getting Goodread reviews. And I was like, oh, people are reviewing my book. This is so exciting. And then I started reading them and I was like, oh my God, people hate me. I have hurt so many people. I'm so the worst. But it's awesome. But it's how do you not just let those mean people affect you?
They're anonymous, right? They're not they're not the people around you. They're not the people that support you or that you like to collab. If you are collaborating with someone and you wrote that book, and they give you feedback and you put it out and then they're like, oh, Ruby, I hate this. Yeah, that's terrible. But you don't know these people and you didn't write that book for those people, right? You wrote it for yourself and for other teenagers and for, a specific audience. And if they don't like that, that's okay. If you wrote something that everybody likes, I don't think it would be a good book. You have a take and it's your take, and not everyone's gonna enjoy it. And again, I think it might be, I look at comments now. Now my favorite thing to do recently is anytime someone writes something shitty about the Gethard show, I'll just thank them for watching, and it infuriates them. I got in this fun little troll argument with this woman that I was like, oh, thank you so much. Yeah, we got 4 more episodes. I can't wait to hear what you think about them. And it's like, Shannon, you're in a mental institution. You and your crew are all mental heads. And I'm like, oh, man, we're the best, aren't we? And it's I just was infuriated, and I was having fun with it. It's those people don't matter. They don't matter. And I think we put too much, we let them, giving them attention is their fuel. And so they don't deserve it. Ruby, you wrote a fucking book and you're 17. Jesus Christ.
How do you deal with failure?
Yeah,
I feel like we should
Ruby.
be asking you for advice.
No, stop. No, I don't. I cry in my room a lot, and I'm.
We all do. You're going to keep
Welcome to
doing that, Ruby. It's
womanhood.
not going to stop. That crying is not going to stop. I was crying this morning.
I got like a D on a paper recently, which like never has happened to me. Like I'm because I'm like a writer. Like papers are my thing. Like I do that well. And my teacher was like, I was crying and she was giving me notes and she was like, I need you to stop crying. I can't help you if you keep crying. And I was like, I'm an emotional person. I can't do this. And then my mom like went to talk to her and was like, what did you do to my daughter? And my teacher was like, your daughter needs to calm down. I was like, I can't.
Women are always told to calm down. Embrace your tears, love them, and anyone who tells you to steer away from your emotions, they're not worth your time.
Yeah, your feelings are your feelings. You can't be told to stop them.
Until someone comes crying to you.
You know what? Come cry to me. I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to hear you, and then I'm going to pass you off to someone else.
I feel like this panel has just become like life advice for a young Ruby Carp.
No, but the thing, I don't, because I'm not on social media. Neither is anyone else in
God
my
bless you.
world. Is actually not. And so I always think it's so weird. Like I would never take my show and like show it to a random person on the subway and be like, "What do you think about this?" And then give a shit about that. Like, why would I possibly do that or care? Or for you, like people saying like how you look or whatever. Give these. Would you ever go up to some random stranger and ask them like to give you their impression of you?
Nor
Like, it
would-
seems like such a bizarre concept to me.
That's why having the phrase, oh, what's going on with me? Or two, if someone asked me that, being like, you suck to them, just face to face. So when I read comments that are sometimes just so poetically awful about me, then you have to laugh at it because I can't imagine sitting in my house typing that out to someone else and hitting send and going, did my work for the day. That'll teach her never to create ever again. So I think you just have to kind of laugh at it and realize that's not who you are, nor is that necessarily the audience that you hope to gather from your creativity. If anything, they're paying attention, so that's helpful.
Yeah, and a lot of haters are just jealous. It's envy of that you actually put yourself out there, and a lot of people are afraid to. And it's about what energy do you want to put out into the world. I won't leave a bad Yelp review. Like, I just won't review them. Like, do you really need to give that energy to the universe?
Well, what if they like have a hair in your soup and they're really mean to you?
Don't
Well,
go back.
if they're mean to me because they're having a bad day, I feel sad for them. If they're mean to me because I'm a lesbian, I might have a comment.
If there's hair in my soup, I'll probably be like, hey, there's hair in my soup. I feel like telling them directly is more effective than on like a review that they can just like delete.
Yeah, you leave like a 22% tip, and then you write this nasty review.
Yeah.
You're like, thank you for the delicious meal. Like, this restaurant is terrible, B.
Yeah. Switching gears a little bit, did any of you guys have a mentor or an inspiration that helped you get into comedy?
I think just the encouragement of my mom. Yeah, that's it.
What, you said your mom didn't like Neon Joe.
Well, but she watched it. That did. My mom sends me an email after every Gethard show.
Was she the troll?
No, oh yeah, my mom's the troll. But I think she was like, she's very proud of my Neon Joe, but after this, it's a little too weird for my mom. And she did write the email that was like, I watched it, that was a weird show. But that's what all her reviews are, very, very to the point. But yeah, my mom always encouraged me to be my weirdo self. She never told me I was weird. She just was like, you're great, and like, was always there to, when I got an internship on Letterman, she was like, we're gonna do it. Like, we couldn't afford it, but she's like, we'll figure it out. So I think that's important. And then when I got to UCB, when I started performing, there was just a lot of strong females performing already. Amy Poehler, obviously, but there's like Jackie Clark and Jessica St. Clair and Jessica Chaffin and Donna Fineglass and Danielle Schneider. Like, just going there, I saw myself on stage as soon as I started going to shows, and that was just like very important. And that is like seeing yourself is a very important thing that will help you. So, I was a huge Roseanne fan. I think there was like a lot of female comedians on TV also, as I was like a little, a kid watching TV in my rec room, I saw Roseanne, and there was that slew of female comics that were getting their own sitcoms, and it made it like, oh, that's cool. I can do that if I want to one day.
And I think for me, I went to art school, and I worked for this artist, Sarah Charlesworth, who was friends with, Cindy Sherman and a lot of, big New York female artists in the 80s. And to me, like, they were the best because they just were so serious about what they were doing, and it was all about the content of what they were making and how important that was. And to me, that's what we're like all about where we are, sort of like what we're making, and sort of not losing sight of that and putting it first. And then also my partners, like, that I met when I was 22 years old that I still work with now are, inspirations to me still. And it's like to have a really great partnerships or people you work with, I think, can really get you through.
My former boss, Jesse Pretz, is definitely my professional mentor and in many ways a life mentor. I worked with him for 2 years, and I worked on Nurse Jackie and Girls and The New Girl with him. And something that I'll always be grateful to him for is he always pulled a chair up at the table for me. And he was incredibly inclusive and warm and loving. And not only, there was a chair for me at Video Village. And so I watched and I learned, and everyone treated me as their equal because of that. And so it's really how you treat people in many ways. And now he's an executive producer on my show. And so, there have been a lot of really special, wonderful people who have helped bring me up, but, he really pulled a chair up at the table for me.
Before we hand it over to the Q&A, which if you guys have any questions, you can line up at that mic over there. My final question for you guys is, what advice would you give to your young self or young people in general who want to get involved in comedy and do what you guys do?
I think I would tell myself to stay hungry, keep going, because making web videos especially, I would upload videos Monday through Friday for years and years, and then I scaled back a little bit, but every time I uploaded, I would silently think, I hope this one goes viral. That's how I'm going to get seen on the internet. And that does happen, but very, very rarely, and so it just was progression over time with consistent this work ethic. And so I think I would tell myself, just keep working. Eventually, something will happen. So don't get discouraged.
Yeah, I think do the work. It's brick by brick. Very few people get discovered very young. And do the work, commit to it, be dedicated, and always question your intent. Are you seeking it for fame, or are you seeking it to make other people feel less alone in the world? What is it that you're aspiring to? And then I'd probably just tell them to ask Aparna.
Yeah. Do you guys have any?
I think a couple of these things have already been said, but don't be afraid to fail. If people don't understand what you're doing right away, I would say look for collaborators and people who understand your sensibility and people who you feel like you can grow around and take chances with. And then the don't compare yourself is a huge one, because I feel like that gets in the way so quickly, and especially if you're just one of two women in your local scene or whatever, people are automatically gonna pit you against each other for no reason, and it's just not necessary. And I think that there's also a quote I once heard about comparing people, where it's we always compare other people's highlight reels to our behind the scenes. So it's it's all of our process and failure we compare to other people's best moments, and it's it's never gonna pan out in your favor. So I would say those are the two main things.
I think also just really have a lot of fun. Don't worry about it so much. Young people, I didn't do anything remotely career-oriented till I was probably 33 years old. We had just a lot of fun. We, did whatever we wanted, tried to work as little as possible, and just we had art shows, we were in a band, just I feel I'm so confused again by young people's desire to work. It is just confounding to me. That was like the last thing I wanted to do. So just like truly enjoy yourself, whatever you think is fun. It's a lot harder to have fun when you're older, like, and just make that a priority.
Everyone said a lot of great stuff, I would say. I think I would say take the note. Don't be defensive when people are giving you feedback. That just listen to those notes for that feedback, and because hopefully you're with people that just want to help you get better. And if you don't like the note, that's okay. But if you become too defensive and precious, it's gonna also stunt your growth. So learn just what you think will work best for you and use them.
May I say one more thing?
Yes.
Loyalty counts in this industry. And I think that, like, if you can find your people, you know, it's easy to be jealous. It's easy to compete. It's easy to fall apart. But, like, find the good, loyal people and, like, fight for them and fight for yourself.
All right, thank you. So we're going to turn this over to you guys. The mic is right there for you guys to line up with questions. So go ahead.
Hi. My question is, where do you guys get your confidence from when you're performing or speaking or anything?
I guess I have an attitude that I would call I don't give a fuck. And I feel lucky that I have that. Like, I guess I just, you know, I worry more about what I think about myself than what I think about, like, others. And I get mad at that I beat myself up on is if I like held back and didn't try something, and then, like, that moment passes and, like, I didn't fucking do it. So, like, I try to just do it. And I just find life is easier if I don't give a fuck. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of faking it. It's a lot of a mirage a lot of the times. Surrounding yourself with good people. One thing this might sound morbid, but if my two friends, Mamrie Hart and Hannah Hart, and I make a lot of content together, and we have this kind of inside joke kind of thing where if one of us is nervous about a scene or a project or a performance or something, we just whisper in each other's ears, we're all going to die someday. And it sounds like really terrible to say to someone, but it really changes your perspective on how little what you're about to do might matter in the grand scheme of things. So just have fun. See, there you go. Now you're confident.
Now you're thinking confidently.
Ooh, with a wine glass.
An empty wine glass. So I'm unhinged. No, I think that it's so inspiring to see you ladies up there, and you ladies are so awesome. And I think that maybe, you know, women in the industry 20, 30 years back would be so amazed and so proud of you. So I kind of want, like, with that context, like, ask you ladies what you see the future in this industry, like 30 years down the line, like what would be the ideal scenario, you know, in the industry, what would it be like women and just in general? That's my question.
I think it was something Mia touched on earlier, which is just more visibility of different life experiences, and that less being like a big, explosive news moment where it's like, trans people exist and they live lives. Like it should be, part of the everyday conversation, just like if you were like a straight white man, and that's like still, I think, considered the default experience here. And I think I would hope that envelope would be pushed on that in a way where it's no longer this huge, big thing when someone else is represented or visible on screen.
I think it was a year or two ago that Eileen Miles was quoted as saying, "Hey, straight white man, can you just sit down for a while and let us take the stage?" Because, I think that hopefully the future represents a lot of women in power and of power, and it shows the diversity of faces and sizes and shapes and ethnicities and religions and sexual fluidities and, but it does take fighting for it.
Go for it.
Sashay out real quick. Thank you, ladies, so much. This has been like awesome, obviously. I have a question that, Ruby, you too can potentially answer. It's a little logistical, so sorry it's not like all philosophical and whatnot, but for me, organization is really difficult, and we talked a little bit about being scatterbrained and whatnot, so how do you ladies, in a creative sense, like how do you stay organized? Because I feel like that's so important, going from idea to execution. So you can.
I don't. Yeah, I just have my own system of Post-it notes that I will cross off as I get things done, and then I remove the Post-it note and I put it on this side of my desk, and at the end of the day, I throw the Post-it note out. But it's you know what, I think it's, yeah, I don't have a good answer for you. I'm gonna listen, because I need that help myself. Because I think there's so much going on all the time, and compared to 10 years ago, of just like the daily things you check in on. I try not to look at social media as much, but that definitely is like a distraction for me. There's too much. There's too much. I have the same question.
The thing is, I'm in high school, so organization is like the most important thing in the world because that's how you don't fail classes. My biggest thing, like Shannon was saying, is learning to turn your phone off and just like stop looking at social media and just do your work. It's also easier for me because I have a class schedule, so I'll go, okay, do I have homework in English? No. And then keep going. But when it comes to comedy and writing and all that stuff, honestly, keeping a planner was one of the smartest choices I've ever made, and writing down what I have to do and when I have to do it actually really helped me. But I also think organization is so specific to who you are and what works for you, because I don't think there's any way that any of us can say, like, this is how you do it, because it's not really like this is a universal thing that everyone can pick up on. It's just how your work ethic works for you.
I don't do this, but I heard a life coach say this once. I should do it. I think about it all the time. Touch it once is like how she handles her inbox, meaning every email stays unanswered, and she's only going to open up the email when she knows in that moment she will respond to it or categorize it however she needs, and so that you don't have to go back and think, oh God, did I respond to this person, and waste so much like mental space, which in theory sounds like a great system, so maybe that is helpful. I should do it, but I like thinking about it.
Cool. Thank you.
Hi. Thanks, guys. This has been really great. I will preface this by saying past 24 hours has been a little bit of an emotional roller coaster as a female in comedy. And I'm wondering if you guys have any tips or tools or ways that you've approached encountering sort of sexism and aggression, either on stage from maybe your, not to stereotype, but typical sort of punk-ass 21-year-old straight white male at, say, an open mic, or maybe even in a writer's room. And, you know, I know my personal approach is, like, I try to surround myself by good, positive, supportive people, but that's not always the case. So I was wondering if you could share from your experience any ways in which you've successfully or unsuccessfully dealt with that. Thank you.
It's mostly unsuccessful, I think, for me. It's really hard. I don't know. It depends who it is. I guess there's some people you can just be like, this is the end for you, and now after this is going to be over, we'll never have to deal with you again, and you can just get through things that way with certain people. But it is damaging to your soul to I've dealt with a lot of sexism and just abusive behavior, not, sexually abusive in a work context at all. But I think just being around abusive people is probably a big part of this business in general. And I guess you kind of just, I don't know, either the universe changes or in some way you just, I don't know, get used to it and don't let it actually affect who you are. But I don't know. I don't really.
I mean, I think speaking to those things is hard, because there is, I imagine there's like you have a fear of, like, if I say this, to this person, is this going to affect me negatively? Where you're trying to make a change for the positive by pointing out, hey, what you did on stage, was sexist, or what you just said to me was sexist, because you try not to, in this business, like, you try not to ruin relationships because you don't know when you're going to need those relationships down the road. But I don't think we should have to approach that being like, oh, I'll just be kind to that person and ignore it. Like, I don't think kindness is going to get us anywhere in that aspect. So I think my advice would be, or I've spoken up and been shut down, and that sucks. But I feel very lucky now that I am in a position of power, that now my voice is heard. So I personally now look for it more, and I'll point it out. I'll be like, hey, like, don't say that word. Like, oh, that's like recently I had someone that like referred to someone that was like in their 20s as girl, and I was like, oh, let's not maybe call her girl. Let's think like lady or woman, because it's like we don't want to infantize this person, and it's like a minor thing, but just trying to explain to them why just calling someone at by certain terms might not be 100% the right way, or saying like, oh, this is very sexist, what you just wrote, and here's why, and this is why I'm telling you why, and now you can say maybe your intent was different, and we can change the words surrounding it to make it work for whatever joke you're going for. But I'm also in a different position where I'm not gonna get fired for calling someone out for being sexist. I feel very lucky in that, and so I also embrace that position as well. But again, when you don't have that power, so to speak, it is hard. But the more we speak up and then talk to people and say hey, I talked to, fucking Blojo about his sexism, and you tell your friends, now they know. So it's kind of you've gone on record with your friends so that they're aware of this behavior or whatever, and then eventually we take them down.
Yeah, I think it's so important in this moment, to not be silent.
Yeah.
Especially when you're in a position of not power, which is how most people spend a lot of their life. And sexism just can't be tolerated. And whether you speak up and defend yourself, hopefully not aggressively, unless you're being aggressed. I don't think that's a word. But if you come at it with genuine, just kind of knowing that you need to be treated with a certain amount of respect, and try to make that vocal, because a lot of what's coming out right now is because there is this idea that we have to be silent, and a lot of women who have been silenced for fear of the power above them. So it actually is by talking and creating communities and finding the people you're not afraid of.
And I think about how important it is to me as I've grown, as a white woman, I have privilege, and so I myself have had difficult conversations about race so that I can grow and be a better ally in my position. And those have been very hard conversations, and they're necessary. So having that hard conversation with someone about their behavior, as a sexist, it can be a little bit maybe even scarier if you don't know how, if it is a cis man or something, you don't know how that they're going to react. But it's necessary for all of us to grow and be better people.
I think we have time for one last question.
Hi, thank you. Going on with Grace said, and building brick by brick and secretly hoping that video goes viral. I feel like we've all made something, or are in the process of making something that either doesn't go viral, it doesn't fail, but it just doesn't go where you want it, or but you love that content so much, you're so proud of what you did. Do you have any advice what to do with that to still be proud of it, even though it might not be viral or 1,000 views, million views, just kind of owning that work and what
make
to do
something
with
else.
It? Yeah.
Keep making, and then someone then will find it, and then that might become viral later. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Keep producing.
Don't let that, if you dwell on the whatever unsuccessful nature of that project, you're wasting time to create something else. And if you truly believe it's wonderful, then what Shannon said, eventually, if you keep working, so you can't necessarily fault yourself for making something bad. It could be something totally great. It's just not the right time. So keep going, because who knows at what point the right person in the right place will see that at the right time and change everything.
I mean, a lot of times for us, like ideas we really like that either don't get done right or whatever, where they come back again and again. I mean, I don't know. They maybe are never successful, but the ideas, I guess, that stick with you, I would be the ones that would keep wanting to pursue. I mean, some things maybe it's better to let them go.
I also think things going viral, it doesn't have to happen the second it comes out. It can go viral 5 years later. It's all, like you said, it's just all about timing and the right person seeing it or retweeting it or something.
Yeah, plus you're going to want to have a bunch of other stuff that you've created if that thing does go viral. And people are like, what else you got? This is great. So if that went viral and you had nothing else to back it up, then that wouldn't be as meaningful of a success either. So set yourself up for success.
And do things really go as viral as they used to?
No.
Right? There's so much stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think it's like important just to, just keep creating so that when someone does click on something, they're like, what is this? They can see what else. Yeah. I think viral is dead. That's my new
Viral
saying
is
it. Viral is dead.
And I feel like there are projects that you're allowed to like there are jokes I have that I keep doing even though they don't work. And arguably that's the definition of insanity. But like, I think you're allowed to have stuff that's for yourself, too. Like, you have to keep yourself fulfilled in an industry that can be very unforgiving and full of a lot of rejection. So it's okay to be like, no one understands.
What's your definition of success? Like, is it the thing that you wanted to make that your people, like your niche of people that get your comedy love, and like maybe it's not for the world? Like, who cares if it doesn't go viral? Like, it's about the body of work, not the quickness of success.
All right, thank you guys so much.
We have 10 seconds, Ruby.
All right, in those 10 seconds, thank you, Shannon, Aparna, Alison, Mia, Grace, Ruby. Thank you all for coming today.
0.
0.
Oh, no, it's going back up, Ruby. It is.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming out today, and we hope you enjoyed the show. Head up to the TBS Comedy Hub up on the 17th floor where you can grab a free beer at the Sam Adams Beer Garden. And check out the bodega with exclusive merch from shows like Conan and Full Frontal with Samantha B.